With seeing how nursing is always evolving, especially seeing it in 2020 and now 2021, a lot of you guys have been asking me if they should be a nurse in 2022 and if it's worth it. And honestly, in my opinion, it's a tough one. But in this video, I'm gonna be going over 5 reasons why you shouldn't be a nurse in 2022. So stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of LifeofaPsychNP. If you are new to this channel, let me formally introduce myself. I'm Darty. I'm a board certified psychiatric nurse practitioner, and in this channel I go over several different subjects to educate the public about mental health, ways to improve your lifestyle, topics related to nursing, nurse practitioners, and specifically psychiatric nurse practitioners like myself. So if you're interested in any of these topics, feel free to subscribe. Make sure you like this video and follow me on Instagram at LifeofaPsychNP. So you probably clicked this video because you're interested in possibly being a nurse, or you're already a nurse and maybe thinking about switching fields. And honestly, it's a very tough decision with all the things that we had to deal with in the nursing field in 2020 and 2021. And it seems like over this 1.5 year span going through this pandemic that a lot of things still haven't changed, and a lot of you guys have been asking me if it's even worth it to still be a nurse, especially if you're not a nurse already and you're maybe thinking about going to the field. Is it worth it in 2022? And in this video, I'm gonna explain why I don't think it's worth it. And yes, I'm gonna come out with another video saying why I think it is worth it, but these are just things to think about because you always have to look at both sides of the conversation. You look at why it's worth it, why it's not worth it, and then from there, you'll have a great conversation on what you want to do. I'm not here to discourage people from not being nurses, but you have to think long and hard if it's worth it to you at the end of the day. And if it is, great. And if it's not, there are other opportunities elsewhere that you can be and make an impact in our society. So always think about that, because at the end of the day, it's all about options. So without further ado, let's get started on why I don't think you should be a nurse in 2022. So let's go. So the very first reason why I think you shouldn't be a nurse in 2022 is because, as evidence has shown in 2020 and 2021, hospitals aren't protecting its workers. And unfortunately, it's still happening even to this day, and we don't necessarily know how it's going to impact people in the future. Yes, they're starting to implement other things like being able to give you PPE, being able to supply you with other supplies to be able to help you, especially in this working situation. But at the end of the day, they're not protecting you, and you're just an employee. And as soon as you realize that you're just an employee to a hospital, you start to look at your value and how you can actually see your life. And unfortunately, people lost their jobs in 2021 and 2020, and it just goes to show that hospitals aren't protecting you. They don't have your best interest. Honestly, it's tough because you think that you're there, you're an employee, you're valued, but at the end of the day, they're just gonna go hire another nurse, especially if you start calling out, especially if you wanna go on stress leave. They're just gonna wanna hire somebody else to take your role. And unfortunately, that's the sad reality, because we're working for all of these bigger organizations that we're just a number, we're just an employee, and that they can replace us without any hesitancy. And it just goes to show you all of the things that are going on, and it's the sad truth, and that's something you have to accept, because at the end of the day, we are just employees for these organizations, and they're gonna do everything in their power to protect them, but not necessarily protect us, whether it comes to our safety. And if you guys saw in 2020 that they weren't even giving out masks for employees that are actually working frontline with COVID patients. They made them use the same mask. I know it's not the same now, but imagine that, and it's sad, but it's true. So that's something you have to think about. So the second reason why you shouldn't be a nurse in 2022 is you rarely get the respect that you deserve. And even in 2020 and 2021, we rarely get the respect that we deserve. And it kind of comes into play in the first reason why hospitals don't necessarily respect us or they don't protect us. And it even comes to patients. When it comes to patient care, they don't respect what we do. They treat us like we're servants to them, because unfortunately, they yell at us, they scream at us, they'll hit us, and they don't respect us at all. And as things are starting to change, especially when it comes to dynamics with family members, especially where they're not even allowed to see their family members, and when patients aren't allowed to see their family members, and the whole dynamic changes, and the first person they're gonna blame is the nurse. And unfortunately, that's the case in any unit that you go to, especially when it comes to being in other units. In particular, for me, in my example, is a psych unit. I go up to patients and say, hey, I'm the nurse practitioner, and they automatically think, oh, you're a nurse and they can treat us a certain way. But when they find out that we're making the decisions, we're able to plan their plan of care, and that's when things change, and they're all polite, they're listening to us, they're able to follow directions. There's so many different things, and unfortunately that's just my situation, so you can only imagine in other situations. And when I worked in the ER, all they were doing, like I had a lot of ER nurses that would get hit, spit on, everything, and you see doctors going through and everything's fine, and they're all super polite to them, and it just changes. And unfortunately that's the situation we're in, and just adding on COVID or the pandemic or whatever the case is, this is gonna be a tough one for everybody to handle, and sometimes it's not worth it. So definitely think about that. So the third reason why you shouldn't be a nurse in 2022 is because the nursing shortage continues to be an issue, and it's getting worse and worse. And unfortunately, nurses are starting to understand that maybe nursing isn't for them. So more and more nurses are leaving the nursing profession, and it's getting harder and harder and more difficult and difficult for nurses to wanna be motivated to work, because the shortage is real, and that's something you have to think about. And when you're when you're understaffed and you're over your ratio, it gets tough, and you wanna not have anything to do with actual nursing, and it's still relevant to this day, and I wish I can tell you that it's gonna change. I don't know what the future holds, but the nursing shortage continues to be an issue. When I was in nursing, there was a nursing shortage, or I'm still in nursing, but when I was a nurse coming out of school, there's a huge nursing shortage. And even to this day, so I graduated in 2013, and even to this day, there's a huge nursing shortage. So we'll see what the future holds, but it seems like it's still heading that way, and it's still impacting current nurses to this day. So the fourth reason why you shouldn't be a nurse in 2022 is because nursing burnout is real. You hear about it, you hear people talking about, oh, nursing is burning out, nurses are burning out, nursing field is starting to burn out, or these nurses are leaving because of burnout. And unfortunately, that's the case. Yes, there are other places where nursing is chill. You're just going to work, doing your daily duties, and not necessarily having to deal with constant change. But for the most part, when you look at acute care facilities or acute hospitals, nursing burnout is real. So you have to take into consideration the shortage. You have to take into consideration how the shortage impacts your ratios, and you have to take into consideration all the stress involved, how patients treat you, how people don't value you, and you have to take all of these things into consideration, and that's when nurses start to burn out. And unfortunately, as nurses, we are the worst, and we don't necessarily take care of ourselves. We don't practice any self-care. We don't believe in seeking out mental health because you think it's just nursing. And unfortunately, people get into this mindset and we start to burn out. And there are so many nurses out there that I know of that are starting to burn out, and it's tough out there. And I wish that things may change, but like I said, you have to factor in the pandemic, you have to factor in nursing shortages, you have to factor in everything, and that's the main reason why nurses are burning out, and it's still gonna continue. And until something changes, until kind of people get whatever the case is, but if something changes for the better for us and the healthcare industry as a whole, then maybe it'll change. But it seems like in 2022, it's still gonna be relevant. So my fifth and final and the main reason why you should consider not being a nurse in 2022 is because the pay and benefits aren't worth it anymore. And growing up, you hear about all of these things where nursing is a steady career, you're getting great pay, you're getting great benefits. If you're in a county facility, you'll get pension, and you can just retire and have a cush job and cush pay throughout your whole life. And that's not the case anymore. A lot of these government systems are actually pulling money away from your pension. And a lot of these places are overworking you so you don't feel like you're getting compensated enough for the pay. Yes, there's travel nursing, but not everyone wants to be a travel nurse. And you can totally see that the rates were high at one point and then they died down and they went back up again, which is cool, don't get me wrong, but not everyone wants to do travel nursing assignments, especially with the ones with families. They don't want to leave their families. They don't want to go everywhere around the world just to be able to chase that paycheck, and they want consistency in their lives, and travel nursing sometimes doesn't provide you that. And this is where pay doesn't necessarily mean anything in this situation, because you're starting to get overworked. You're starting to get stressed out. You're starting to get burnt out. You're working above or under ratio or over ratio, and you feel like the hospitals are protecting you, and there's so many different factors involved, like I mentioned, and ultimately the pay is not worth it. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these bedside nurses want to go to NP route, and people just want to get out of the hospital because they're feeling so overwhelmed and they just want to become NPs and hoping that their pay is going to get better. But the reality is, when you look at the average NP rate, it's not that much higher, and if anything, it might be even shorter or lower than what you're expecting, and that's something you have to think about. And if pay is the main thing in your mind, or stability or consistency within your pay, benefits, and this is the main reason why you're going into nursing, yes, obviously you want to help, but if you feel like the pay is great and all of those things are aligned and that's the main reason why you're going into nursing, think about not doing it, because all the other factors involved can contribute to the pay, and it might not feel worth it. And that's the biggest thing. And if I were gonna do it all over again, that's the main reason why I would think otherwise and not being a nurse. And I went to nursing for a whole different thing, because I saw the passion, I saw the mental health component, I saw how nurses were making a huge impact. But mind you, this was in 2011, before I even went into nursing, or 2010, before I even went to nursing school. And I felt that they were safe. They were doing everything in their power. But now that more and more nurses are coming out, and more people are starting to become sick, and people living a lot longer, and all these comorbidities come into play, it gets tough. And I think from now, if I were going to start this career, I probably wouldn't go into nursing. But at the same time, everyone's different. But I just wanted to kind of shed light on all of these opportunities and all of these downfalls, especially the downfalls in this video. And obviously I'm going to talk about the good ones in probably my next video coming out next week. But for the most part, I just wanted to kind of shed light on topics that people don't want to talk about, because people glamorize nursing. They say that nursing is the best thing out there, and it really is. It can be for certain people, but for certain people it can't be. And if I can help you avoid a mistake that you might regret moving forward, I'm glad I did. But if I kind of just cemented the fact that I'm able to overcome these things and still be a nurse, then amazing job. And like I said, I'm not here to condone nursing. I'm not here to persuade you from not being a nurse, because we do definitely need more nurses out there, especially with the way things are trending towards with the healthcare industry. So definitely we need you. Rant over. But for the most part, like I said, it's up to you to decide if you want to be a nurse or not. But I wanted to put more of a spotlight on this topic, because a lot of you guys have been asking me if I would do it all over again. And like I said, I probably wouldn't, but everyone's different. Well guys, I hope this video had you thinking. I hope it was able to kind of help you process whether or not you want to be a nurse or not. And if you do, great. And if you don't and you find better things, then even better. And I'm glad that I was able to help in the process. Well guys, have a wonderful day. Until next time, bye.